let me tell you something. Most people don't struggle with what to say. They struggle with how to say it. They have ideas, emotions, thoughts, insights, but when it's time to express them, everything collapses, words stumble, confidence fades, and meaning gets lost. You know why? Because clarity isn't just about words, it's about self-awareness. If you don't understand what you're truly thinking, you'll never articulate it clearly. So let's start there. Know what you think before you speak. Before you can speak clearly, you must first think clearly. Pause. Ask yourself, what do I really want to say? What do I really mean? What's the purpose behind my words? Clarity doesn't come from speed. It comes from precision. You don't need to talk more. You need to say less with purpose. When you slow down your mind, your words begin to align. Control your emotions. When emotion takes over, articulation disappears. Think of it like this. Emotions are like fog. The more intense they are, the less you can see through them. When you're angry, defensive, or insecure, your words stop serving you. They start serving your feelings. So the next time you're in a heated moment, breathe. Don't let emotion drive your mouth. Control the emotion, or it will control your expression. Speak with structure. Most people speak in circles. They start here, jump there, then come back again, confusing everyone in the process. Structure your thoughts like a story. Start with a clear point. Support it with one or two examples. End with your conclusion. That's how you make your message land. When people listen to you, they should walk away knowing exactly what you meant, not guessing what you were trying to say. Master the power of silence. Silence is your ally. When you pause, you command attention. When you stop talking, people start listening. Never be afraid of silence. Use it. Let your words breathe. Let your listener feel your message. Great communicators don't rush. They let their words travel. Speak to connect, not to impress. Too many people talk to sound smart. The truth is, clarity beats complexity every single time. If your goal is to impress, you'll use big words and lose people. If your goal is to connect, you'll use real words that hit home. Speak so your listener understands, not so you can show off how much you know. The smartest people I've met don't make things complicated. They make things simple. Listen more than you speak. The best communicators are not just great talkers. They're great listeners. When you listen, you learn how people think, how they feel, what they need. Then you can respond with clarity and precision. You can't articulate your thoughts clearly if you don't understand your audience first. It's not just about speaking your truth. It's about speaking it in a way that they can hear it. Practice until it's effortless. Clarity is a skill, not a gift. You practice it every time you explain something, share an idea, or have a difficult conversation. Record yourself. Watch how you speak. Notice your tone, your pauses, your pacing. Do you ramble? Do you rush? Do you hesitate? Fix it. Over time, your communication becomes sharp, confident, powerful. When you can articulate your thoughts clearly, you become dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a powerful one, because clarity builds credibility. Clarity earns respect, and clarity gives you influence. The world listens to those who know how to express themselves. So slow down, think deeply, speak deliberately, and you'll find yourself communicating with more power, confidence, and clarity than 99% of people ever will. Clarity begins with self-awareness, not vocabulary. Most people think if they just use the right words, the perfect phrases, or the most impressive language, they'll sound intelligent, confident, and articulate. But that's not how clarity works. You can memorize 1,000 fancy words, but if you don't understand yourself, what you truly think, believe, or feel, those words will collapse the moment you open your mouth. Real clarity starts inside you. It starts with knowing your thoughts before you express them, understanding your values before you defend them, and being grounded in your truth before you share it with others. When you lack self-awareness, your communication becomes scattered, hesitant, and inconsistent. You start talking just to fill silence, reacting instead of responding, and saying things you don't even mean. But when you are self-aware, every word you say carries intention. When you are self-aware, you no longer speak to prove yourself. You speak to express yourself. You don't scramble to sound smart because you already know what you stand for. And that inner certainty naturally shapes the way your message is received. Think about it. How often do people speak without even knowing why they're saying what they're saying? They get caught in conversations trying to sound right, trying to win, trying to convince. But beneath that noise, there's confusion. They're unsure of their real stance. They haven't taken a moment to sit with their thoughts, question their motives, or reflect on what they actually believe. That's why they fumble. That's why their words lack weight, because you cannot communicate clarity you don't have internally. Self-awareness is the discipline of looking inward before you speak outward. It's taking a pause before responding, not to delay the conversation, but to align your thoughts with your intention. The most powerful communicators are not the loudest ones. They're the ones who think before they talk. They don't rush to fill the air. They process, they filter, and then they deliver with purpose. That's why their message lands, because it comes from a place of alignment between mind, heart, and voice. When you speak from alignment, people can feel it. They may not know why, but your words carry conviction. They can sense that you're not performing, you're being authentic. Self-awareness also means owning your biases and emotions. Every thought you have passes through the filter of your experiences, beliefs, and insecurities. If you don't recognize those filters, they'll distort your communication. For example, if you're angry, you'll exaggerate. If you're insecure, you'll over-explain. If you're seeking validation, you'll twist your message to get approval. That's how communication loses clarity. When you are unaware of your emotional state, your words become reactive. But when you know yourself, when you can say, I'm feeling defensive right now, or I'm frustrated and it's coloring how I speak, you regain control over your delivery. You stop letting your emotions dictate your tone, and you start speaking from logic and balance instead of impulse. The more you understand yourself, the less you fear silence. People who lack self-awareness often rush their words because silence feels uncomfortable. They mistake quiet moments for disapproval or weakness. But people who are self-aware understand that silence is power. It's the space where thoughts form and clarity grows. They take their time because they know their voice doesn't need to compete for validation. When you speak from that kind of calm, your presence commands respect. You don't need to shout or over-explain. Your composure speaks for you. Self-awareness also sharpens your listening. You can't be clear if you only focus on your own words. True clarity comes from understanding the person in front of you, their emotions, their perspective, their intent. When you're self-aware, you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're observing, processing, connecting. You begin to notice what's really being said beneath the surface. That awareness helps you shape your response with precision, empathy, and authority. You don't react to what's said at face value. You respond to what's actually meant. That difference separates someone who talks from someone who communicates. Another element of self-awareness is knowing your communication strengths and weaknesses. Are you a thinker who struggles to express emotions? Are you a feeler who speaks too quickly when passionate? Are you someone who avoids confrontation and waters down your words? Self-awareness helps you identify those tendencies and adjust. It's not about perfection. It's about understanding your natural patterns and working with them instead of against them. When you understand your communication style, you can adapt it depending on who you're speaking to and what message you want to deliver. That adaptability gives you an edge most people never develop. The biggest misconception about articulation is that it's all about words. It's not. The best speakers in the world don't use complicated language. They use simple words that hit deeply because they come from clarity. When you know what you think, you can say it in one sentence. When you don't, you'll need paragraphs to explain what could have been said in 10 words. That's why some people speak for hours and say nothing, while others speak for a minute and leave you thinking for days. Clarity comes from internal order. If your mind is chaotic, your words will be too. But if you take time to reflect, journal, or simply sit in quiet thought, your ideas will start aligning themselves. You'll notice patterns in how you think. You'll discover what truly matters to you and what's just noise. You'll begin to filter out distractions and get to the essence of what you want to express. And once that happens, you won't need to chase the right words. They'll come naturally because your thoughts will already be organized. To articulate your thoughts better than 99% of people, you don't need to sound smarter. You need to be more honest with yourself. Honesty brings clarity. When you stop trying to impress, when you stop hiding behind overcomplicated language, you begin to speak in a way that feels real, grounded, and confident. And people respond to that. They lean in, they trust you because they can sense that you've done the inner work. The clearer you are about yourself, your beliefs, emotions, priorities, and purpose, the clearer your communication will be. Your voice becomes steady, your tone consistent, your words intentional. You no longer speak to fill space. You speak to create meaning. That's the power of self-awareness. It turns your thoughts into tools, not traps. It makes your message sharp, impactful, and unforgettable. Control your emotions before they control your expression. The way you speak is a direct reflection of how you feel inside. When you let your emotions take charge, your words stop working for you and start working against you. Anger makes your tone harsh. Fear makes your voice small. Insecurity makes your message weak. And ego makes your delivery arrogant. You might have the best point in the world, but if it's wrapped in emotional chaos, no one will hear it. People don't just listen to what you say. They feel how you say it. And when your emotions overpower your logic, your clarity vanishes. You can't articulate clearly when you're emotionally unstable because your focus shifts from expression to reaction. Instead of thinking, what's the best way to say this? You start thinking, how do I defend myself? Or how do I prove them wrong? Emotion is energy. It moves fast, it's powerful, and it demands release. But powerful doesn't mean useful. The people who communicate with precision and authority aren't the ones without emotions. They're the ones who have learned to master them. They've built emotional discipline. They know when to speak, when to pause, and when to say nothing. That restraint doesn't make them cold. It makes them effective. When you can manage your emotions, you can direct them instead of being directed by them. You can transform emotion into expression that's calm, deliberate, and impactful. When you're angry, your words become weapons. When you're anxious, your words become uncertain. When you're defensive, your words become shields. In every case, your message gets distorted. You stop expressing truth and start expressing emotion. That's why emotional control is the foundation of powerful communication. It gives your words stability. It keeps your tone consistent. and your thoughts organized even under pressure. Think of someone who remains composed when everyone else is losing control. Their calmness becomes authority. Their words carry weight not because they shout, but because they're steady. To control your emotions, you first have to recognize them. You can't manage what you don't notice. Most people aren't emotionally aware, they just react. They feel a rush of irritation or fear and immediately respond. They defend, attack, or withdraw without even realizing it. Self-regulation starts with observation. When you feel something rise in you, frustration, defensiveness, anxiety, don't fight it and don't feed it. Just notice it. Name it silently. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling dismissed. I'm feeling nervous. Naming an emotion is powerful because it separates you from it. You become the observer instead of the reactor. Once you recognize, what's happening inside you, you can decide how to respond. That's emotional intelligence in motion. When emotions are high, clarity is low. The brain literally shifts into survival mode. You stop listening, you stop reasoning, and you start defending. That's why people say things in anger they later regret, because they weren't speaking from intention, they were speaking from adrenaline. The key to communication under stress is to create space between emotion and reaction. That space is where clarity lives. Even a few seconds of silence can make a difference. A breath, a pause, a deliberate moment to reset. In that short pause, your logic returns, your tone softens, and your words regain control. Emotion itself isn't the enemy. It becomes destructive only when it's unmanaged. In fact, emotion can enhance your message when used with awareness. Passion adds power, empathy builds connection, and sincerity earns trust. But it's a delicate balance. Too much emotion and your message drowns in intensity. Too little and your words lose life. Controlled emotion is like controlled fire. It warms, it illuminates, it draws people in. Uncontrolled emotion burns everything in its path. The difference lies in discipline. There's also a subtle danger in emotional overattachment. When you're too emotionally invested in your perspective, you lose the ability to see the bigger picture. You stop listening. You interpret everything as a challenge or an attack. That's when conversations turn into conflicts. The goal of communication is not to win, but to be understood. And being understood requires calm. It requires enough detachment to stay curious rather than defensive. The moment you stop needing to prove your point, your clarity returns. You begin to communicate with purpose instead of pride. Another part of emotional control is tone management. The same words can sound wise or hostile depending on your tone. You can say, I understand what you're saying, in a way that invites dialogue or in a way that shuts it down completely. Your tone reveals your internal state more than your words do. People may not remember your exact sentences, but they will always remember how your tone made them feel. That's why controlling your tone is essential. Speak slower. Lower your volume. Steady your breathing. These small physical adjustments send a message to your brain that you're in control. And once your body calms, your words follow. Confidence also plays a role in emotional control. When you're uncertain about your worth, every disagreement feels like a personal attack. But when you're secure, you can handle challenges without losing composure. Emotional control grows from self-confidence, from knowing that your value isn't dependent on someone's opinion or reaction. When you don't take things personally, you speak with more clarity and less tension. You stop trying to fight for your dignity because it's no longer under threat. That freedom allows your communication to be assertive, not aggressive. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. Suppression is just silence under pressure. It always explodes later. True control means understanding your emotions, processing them, and deciding when and how to express them. If you're angry, take a walk before the conversation. If you're nervous, breathe deeply and focus on your message, not yourself. If you're hurt, write your thoughts down before speaking them aloud. The act of processing emotion turns reaction into response. Emotional control also determines how you handle difficult conversations. When someone insults you, challenges you, or pushes your buttons, the real test isn't what you say next. It's whether you can stay calm enough to choose what to say next. The person who keeps composure under pressure always wins the room. People trust them more, listen to them more, and remember them more, because calmness is not weakness. It's a sign of inner power. It shows that you're not easily manipulated or provoked. When you speak from controlled emotion, your message becomes balanced, strong yet calm, passionate yet precise. Your words no longer serve your impulses. They serve your purpose. Emotional control makes your communication sharp because it removes noise. It keeps your message clean and your delivery confident. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about refusing to let those feelings dictate your voice. The difference between ordinary speakers and powerful communicators is not in what they know, but in how they handle what they feel. When emotion drives your words, you lose direction. When discipline drives your emotion, your words hit exactly where they're meant to. Speak to connect, not to impress. The moment you shift your focus from impressing people to connecting with them, everything about your communication changes. Most people speak from a place of ego. They want to sound intelligent, to be admired, to prove that they belong in the room. But that kind of speaking always creates distance. It makes the listener feel small, defensive, or disconnected. True articulation is not about showing how much you know. It's about making others feel understood. Connection is what makes words memorable. When someone feels seen and valued through your message, they don't just listen, they absorb. They trust you. They remember you. The goal is never to dominate the conversation, but to create understanding. You do that by speaking from authenticity, not performance. When you're trying to impress, your mind is on yourself. You're thinking, do I sound smart enough? Do they like me? Do I seem confident? That internal chatter pulls your focus away from the person you're talking to. You start choosing words for how they make you look instead of how they make others feel. But when your goal is connection, your attention shifts outward. You start to see the other person, their expression, their energy, their reaction. You listen not just to reply, but to understand. That change in focus transforms your communication. Your tone softens, your words simplify, and your presence becomes genuine. People can feel when your intention is to connect rather than to compete. Connection begins with empathy. You have to care enough to step outside of yourself and into the world of the person you're speaking to. Ask yourself, what does this person need to hear right now? What emotion are they carrying beneath their words? What fear or doubt might they be hiding? When you communicate with that kind of awareness, you build bridges, you make people feel safe, and safety is the foundation of influence. No one opens their mind to someone who makes them feel small, but they will listen to someone who makes them feel respected. The irony is that when you stop trying to impress people, you naturally become more impressive. Confidence that comes from authenticity is magnetic. You no longer rely on forced gestures, big words, or exaggerated stories. You speak simply, but your presence does the work. People can sense the difference between rehearsed and real. Real connection doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It just needs to be honest. To speak to connect, you must first listen with intention. Most people underestimate how much power there is in listening. Listening tells the other person, You matter. And when people feel that, they respond in kind. They open up. They share more. They become more receptive to what you have to say. Listening also gives you the information you need to communicate clearly. You start understanding what truly matters to your audience. You can then tailor your message in a way that lands deeply. Great communicators don't just deliver information, they deliver understanding. They make sure what they're saying actually reaches the listener's world. Connection is also built through vulnerability. When you allow yourself to speak from a place of honesty rather than perfection, people relate to you. They see themselves in your story, in your mistakes, in your lessons. Perfection distances, vulnerability unites. You don't have to share everything, but you have to share something real. When you admit a challenge you've faced or a truth you've learned the hard way, your words gain weight. People stop seeing you as someone above them and start seeing you as someone beside them. That's when your message sticks. Clarity and simplicity are the language of connection. Complicated words create barriers. When you use simple language, you meet people where they are. You don't lose meaning by simplifying. You amplify it. Think of the most powerful speeches in history. They were simple, direct, and emotional. The power came not from the complexity of the language, but from the truth behind it. When you choose words that are clear and relatable, you make it easier for people to engage with you. You don't need to prove your intelligence. Your clarity already does that for you. When your goal is connection, your body language changes too. You maintain eye contact. You use gestures that feel natural, not rehearsed. You lean in slightly because you're interested, not because you're performing interest. Your tone becomes conversational instead of robotic. Everything about your delivery signals, I'm here with you. And that presence creates trust. People are drawn to speakers who make them feel included rather than impressed from afar. Speaking to connect also means respecting your listener's experience. You don't speak at them, you speak with them. That small shift in mindset turns a monologue into a dialogue. It invites participation, reflection, and curiosity. You stop trying to sound like the hero of your story and start letting the listener become part of it. You give space for their thoughts, their insights, their reactions. When people feel like their presence shapes the conversation, they become emotionally invested in it. The best communicators understand timing. They know when to speak, when to pause, and when to let silence carry the message. Silence is a connection tool because it gives others time to process, to feel, to think. When you rush to fill every gap with words, you rob the listener of reflection. But when you pause, your words settle. The other person feels acknowledged rather than overwhelmed. That balance of speaking and silence is where connection deepens. To connect, you must also match energy. If someone is soft spoken, meet them with gentleness. If they're passionate, meet them with enthusiasm. Mirroring someone's tone doesn't mean imitation. It means alignment. It tells them, I see you. I'm with you. That subtle alignment builds comfort, and comfort opens the door for real communication. Another aspect of connection is intention. Before you speak, ask yourself why you're saying what you're about to say. Is it to share, to help, to inspire, or is it to be admired? Intention shapes perception. When your intention is pure, people can feel it. They may not analyze your words, but they'll sense your sincerity. Communication that comes from a place of service rather than self-promotion always resonates deeper. Connection requires patience. You can't force someone to understand or agree with you. You can only offer your perspective with respect and let it land where it will. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold space for someone else's truth, even if it differs from yours. When people feel that level of respect, They start to trust you, and that trust gives your future words more influence. You don't connect through perfection. You connect through presence. Every time you speak, your job is not to impress the room, but to reach one person's heart, one person's understanding, one person's perspective. You achieve that by being fully there, not trying to perform, not trying to prove, but simply being present enough to make the other person feel seen. That's the essence of real communication.